In communication with Southern California, KHJ-TV Public Affairs presents Teen Talk. The majority of high school and college newspaper editors continue in the field of journalism. Most high school newspapers are monitored and reviewed by a teaching staff. High school newspapers are generally reflective of the political, social, and economic times and the political, social, and economic area where the high school is located.
Ernest Hemingway said, "A writer's problem does not change. He himself changes, and the world he lives in changes, but his problem remains the same. It is always how to write the truth so that it becomes part of the experience of the person who reads it." I'm Joseph Feinstein, and today on Teen Talk, we've invited a panel of high school newspaper editors to share with us how they try to make the pen mightier than the sword, or nowadays, the pen mightier than the television set. Please introduce yourselves, panel, and tell us the name of both your school and your newspaper. Let's start with Jeff.
My name is Jeff Langan, and I go to San Pedro High School, and the paper is the Fore and Aft.
Fore and Aft, okay.
I'm Eric Johnson, and I go to Culver City High School, and we put out the Centurion.
The Centurion?
The Centurion.
Centurion, okay, Centurions.
I'm Jay Tech U. I'm from Los Angeles High School, and I'm the editor of Blue and White.
I'm Elaine Nevsky. I'm from Palisades High School, and we produce the Tide Line.
I'd like to introduce our special guest today is Noel Greenwood, the Deputy Managing Editor of the Los Angeles Times, and that's quite a problem being that, isn't it?
It keeps me busy, Joe.
It does. And on your toes?
Yes, indeed.
All right. Sandra.
I'm Sandra Macias from San Fernando High School, and we produce the El Tigre newspaper.
El Tigre.
Tigre.
Tigre. For the tiger?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm Andrew Weiss, and I'm editor of the Beverly Hills High School weekly student newspaper, Highlights.
Okay.
My name is Eric Boehm, and I'm from the University High School Warrior.
Okay, what exactly do you gentlemen do, and ladies, do as an editor of your school paper? Who'd like to handle it? Let's start with you, Jeff.
We have to look over the other page editors. We have page editors of the editorial, opinions, news, features, and just kind of oversee operations, make sure the stories are in, they're in on time, they're complete, and just kind of oversee everything, make sure it gets put together correctly.
How many people you have working for you, Andrew?
Well, it's gone down in size. Last year we were working with maybe 30 people on staff, and now we've dwindled down to about 17 to 20.
17 to 20
So it's
that
really
you have
difficult.
to guide. You're in charge
On
of
a weekly
guiding.
basis, though. If we were, say, going bi-weekly or maybe on a monthly basis, it would be much easier to have a small staff and still, come out with the same amount of, work. But it's really hard because now, say, every single person who's on staff has to write a story every week or thereabouts, and that's demanding.
That is demanding, along with their other homework and their other responsibilities at the school. That is demanding. How many people, how often do you produce your paper?
We produce our paper about monthly. We have 40 people on our staff, which is an awful lot in the beginning of the year. It's taken a little time. Yeah, I know all their names. It takes a little time to weed out who wants to write as much because it's very demanding, and we have certain people. We have about 15 people who write about an article weekly.
And you produce it once every day.
Once every day.
And what's the problem? What's the biggest problem that you face?
Communications. It's a very large newspaper. I have 350 people in my area. The total editorial staff is about 1,000. Very easy to fall over each other.
Really?
And
Wow.
And so we have to work hard at communicating.
And do you do that?
Oh, yes, constantly.
With the whip?
No. Much gentler fashion.
The word processes are working overtime, though,
Yes,
right?
indeed.
Okay. Tell me, panel, how do you stimulate, the staff is the most important part, how do you stimulate them to be creative, to work in a, an environment where there's a school and they've got to watch their P's and Q's and all the rest of that stuff? J-Tech, how do you stimulate your staff to get to work for you?
Well, first of all, I try to assign the stories to the reporters and other editors of their interest. If let's say one reporter's interest in sports, and then I let them concentrate on sports, but I also make sure that they get exposed to different variety of field and expand their interest as well.
Okay, and Eric, what do you do to get them? You're like a quarterback for the football team, aren't you?
Yeah, I suppose so. Basically, the way we make sure that a writer, has enthusiasm about their story is just to assign them when we pick who's going to write a story, we just ask the writers what story they'd most like to write. And usually there's not many, it doesn't conflict too much. And so usually it works itself out pretty well. And like if I want to write an editorial on this subject, I'll bring, before I was editor, I'd bring it up to the editors. And then, and that's what I let other people do to me. And so we don't by any means choose all the stories that we put out. We leave it up to the reporters too.
Oh, I see. Sandra, how many people are working on your paper?
20.
20.
Yeah.
Now, you just took over a couple of months ago as the school editor.
Yeah.
And what were you doing before that? Were you writing for the paper?
No, I was page 2 editor and writing too.
Now, how do you develop the kind of spirit to get these other people working for you and for the school paper?
Well, we let them do the stories that they would like to do, and we see it's easier that way for them because they're interested in it. And that's mostly the way we do it.
What types of articles do you print for your paper, Eric?
Oh, we are divided into 4 separate categories: news, feature, editorial, and sports. And news is limited to the LAUSD. It's out there, the news, but it takes the most work because people really have to find it.
A recent survey indicated that 67% of all 17-year-olds would rather go to the movies than read a book. Do you feel anyone is actually reading what you guys print? Eric, how do you feel about that?
I think they are, because the attention span of the typical student is what's responsible for them not reading books. And for instance, our paper is only 4 pages long, so they usually read it, and it pertains to them as opposed to just society in general, which I think they're interested in.
Do you think they're still reading? Are they reading your paper too?
Last year we found an interesting trend. We put more pictures in our paper than ever before, and we're more successful than we've ever had been in selling them. So yeah, I think it's more important to be graphic more than the words you print.
You got a lot of pictures in the LA Times also, I noticed, but you also have a lot of good copy. Do you notice anything about the teenagers, and do the papers sell to the kids?
We worry about that a good deal. We worry that younger readership is declining, and that newspapers may down the road become a sort of a dinosaur. I'm not sure that's so, but we notice that our stronger readership is among older groups.
Really? And what are you doing then to convince or to bring these young people back to the newspaper?
We just started a newspaper in the classroom program that will bring the Times into many, many classrooms in Southern California. We are entering into other programs like that to involve young people with the Times.
Well, I know that there's the 4-pager, the Student Outlook. I'm sure it gets to your schools, and it's a wonderful paper that's put out, and the kids get a copy of this each week. The news is constantly changing with highlights of what's going on in the world, kind of thing.
We are also, for example, going into some individual schools on an experimental basis, bringing editors into the schools each week and working with the journalism classes.
Wonderful.
We're doing that in a high school in El Monte right now, and the results have been terrific on our side.
Well, maybe one of these kids can get a chance at crack at that kind of thing too, now that you've come to know them.
Sure.
Speaking about the paper, one of the things I'm really most curious about is, do you guys determine the policy of what's going into that newspaper? Or is it determined by your journalism teacher? Is it determined by the principal of the school? Is it determined by external forces or by you? Who makes up that?
The main policy, of course, is developed by our staff. And our journalism advisor gives suggestions and advices that are very helpful. But the main story, the main editorials and the front page headlines and front page news story are determined by the staff, our editors and the
You see something you don't like. You observe something that's going on in your school that's really getting you irritated, Elaine. You've got a paper. You want to say something. Can you utter those ideas in an editorial?
I think that at our paper, it is left up to the editors and the faculty advisors' discretion. I think what the administration is most concerned about is presenting any story as honestly as possible. There was a controversy several years ago over the fact that the newspaper often printed negative sides only. And what the administration's major concern is that we present both sides and leave the opinion more to the editorial section.
Do you remember any other stories? Go ahead, Andrew.
Well, I think the most important thing is that the papers act professionally. The only guidelines we have is that if something is well written and it's neither libelous, obscene, nor likely to disrupt the school day, then it goes in. But otherwise, there's a certain amount of responsibility. If it's an issue where there is another side, you go talk to the other side. But if not, then you can write it off the top of your head. But there is a certain amount of responsibility involved.
Yeah, I think it's really important to keep a high school paper, as student-run as possible. I mean, that way, in our case, we succeed or fail on our own merits, and that's the best way to learn.
Well, I do too, and I remember I was telling you a little bit about this at the break, that in our school, one time about 15, 20 years ago, our principal came around and put out his list of books that the kids could not read. It was an arbitrary list that he unilaterally selected and said to the English department to convey to the kids that we weren't going to read these books. Now, the journalism teacher, who is an English teacher, knew about this also, but there was never any remarks about this in the school paper. There is never in our paper sometimes never any remarks about a kid who commits suicide, for instance. Nobody ever sees this kid any longer in the school. They wonder, why isn't he there? Nobody will print an article about this in the school paper and help us understand why he's not there. Would you do that, Jeff?
Yeah, I'm proud to say that the Fore and Aft has taken the responsibility on to present the controversial issues, especially on the opinions page. We don't bring anything into the news page. The news page is strictly objective. And we allow for the readers to respond back to us, and we encourage letters to the editor. And we also respond to those letters sometime that they write in. So all those things, I think, are just handled, like they said, are handled very professionally by the staff, and that makes the staff proud of their paper.
The administration, let's say, Mr. So-and-so or Miss So-and-so, the principal, came down to you and said, I forbid you to print this kind of information to the public at our school. What do you do? Andrew?
It doesn't happen. The only person who sees our copy before it happens is the advisor, and he's just that, he's an advisor, and he can only hold something if it's that libelous or obscene or likely to disrupt the school day. Other than that, no administrators touch the paper until it comes out.
Really?
So we act responsibly, and they treat us that way, and they treat us with the same amount of respect as they would treat any other newspaper.
Sandra, does it work the same way for you?
Yeah, it does. If there's a story that our advisor wouldn't want in, and I feel strongly about it, then I can put it in. Because if it's with the law and, doesn't say nothing obscene or nothing, then if I feel it could go in, I'll put it in.
Are you allowed to criticize the school and the faculty and the curriculum and all the rest of the stuff? Yeah, Eric?
Well, what I've noticed in our school is that we're a lot more, they give us a lot more leeway with more general topics, like say if we've written stories on AIDS and we've written stories on drugs and these things, but it gets a little tighter with our school when you get down to the administration.
Someone once said, a writer should write for the youth of his own generation, the critics of the next, and the schoolmasters of ever afterwards. Panel, of which story or article that you've had published are you most proud? Jeff?
Well, I think it's fantastic that our first issue of the Fore and Aft this year dealt with the controversial subject of AIDS. And it dealt with a student's perspective, and it also dealt with the causes and effects. And it's great because what better way to communicate with the students than through the school newspaper?
Right.
And they're also very concerned about the subject, and maybe it's touchy and they don't know who to ask or who to go to. So this way they're getting they're getting information that is true and that is concise and that they can rely on. They're not just talking to their friends, it's not hearsay. And also, in the last issue we did some things on the year-round schools, which I think is really concerning everyone right now. We had some news stories, some speak-outs, and some editorials, because that's something that's going to disrupt a lot of students' lives in their 9th through 12th grade at
That's beautiful. That's a very
the
good
high school.
example. Very good example. You were saying that there's an example you had
Yeah,
too.
last year we had the unfortunate circumstances of having several students involved in fatal accidents, car-wise, and we had a reporter who took a personal viewpoint because he knew most of the people, and the viewpoint that he took was he made it personal and he brought it about and get students involved and get them to stop speeding by asking them to think, and does it really take a death of a student for us to stop speeding? And we got a great reaction from it, and it did curb. We had a lot less accidents in the future. It really worked.
Any story you're particularly proud of there, Mr. G?
I think the one that gave me the most pleasure, in 1984, we won the Pulitzer Prize for a series that I was involved in on the Latino community in Southern California. And that was great fun and great pleasure. I don't put a great deal of store in prizes, but that one is fun to win.
What was the point of the article?
It was a series of perhaps 25 pieces that tried to help the reader understand the changes that have occurred in Southern California, the arrival of Latinos in a significant way, and the part they're going to play in our society.
Are there any other stories that any of you have that you would like to share with us?
Yeah,
Go ahead,
I
Jacob.
remember I wrote a story last year of this Vietnamese refugee student in the campus, and it was an in-depth personal interview story, and he had this interesting anecdote of how he came about becoming a refugee. And after I wrote the story, I also received a lot of feedback because some of the statements that he stated in the article was a bit controversial. He had a bit of an anti-Americanism statement, and I had a lot of statements coming back, and it was a good experience.
Well, that is good. That is good. That raises the whole idea of allowing a student to utter these kinds of statements. You know, the strength of America and the strength of our whole country is predicated on people saying things criticizing our form of government, our representatives, our leaders. This is how we keep on getting strong and how our leaders keep getting a little bit better, hopefully from time to time. Who among in the community of publishers and people in the writing field, other than Mr. Greenwood here, do you most admire, panel? Who do you most admire? Who are some of your heroes in the writing field? Andrew, you got one?
I'd say, among authors and poets, I'd say Jack Kerouac and Allen Ginsberg are my favorite writers. But when it comes to the newspapers, I think that the people that are the best are the people you don't know the names of, the guys who do their stories and they do them well, and you never have to bother with a name or wonder who gets the blame for doing something wrong.
I see. That's a wonderful way to put it. And you're right. Many times we never know the writers of these
The majority
stories.
of the people on the front page of the LA Times, you just don't know their names, but they do their jobs and they do them well.
Who do you admire, Sandra?
Well, I just read a lot, but I just don't pay attention to the name really.
Really?
Yeah, so
What's-
I just read the paper and that's about it.
Do you read newspapers every day too? I mean, aside from
Yeah.
your, do you
I
read the
receive
Times and
the-
the Herald Examiner and
Yeah, I read the Daily News.
the Daily News?
Yeah.
That's the Valley paper.
Mm-hmm.
I see. And you get some ideas from there?
Well, some, but not a lot.
I see. Where do you get your ideas, Eric?
Oh, most of them are student initiated. Our university high school, they go to a lot of conventions, journalist conventions, and I think it's real important for other journalists from all over the nation to interact, or from all over the state, and that's the best way they share each other's ideas.
Well, have you always been interested in the paper? I used to write for my school paper too. I was the page 2 editor, and I wrote for my college paper, and I loved writing, and I still write. I write columns now and then, and I write for money to different magazines and stuff like that. It really turns me on. Have you always been a writer?
I started in junior high school, putting out a weekly newspaper on a mimeograph machine. Stayed with newspapers in high school, was the editor of my high school paper, and I've been hooked ever since.
Really?
I love it. I wouldn't do anything else for a living.
Really? But isn't it lonely sitting there and just composing and creating?
Not with 350 people around. No. Sometimes
It's like
I wish it were.
It's like your own cheer team. You know, get going. Greenwood, go, Greenwood.
It is a very individual art. That's to be sure. Everybody here, I think, understands that.
Yeah. What do you want to make this your career? Is this the plan that you're going to be newspaper people forever and ever? Eric, is this in the plans?
I don't know. I just kind of, I'm writing in the newspaper because I like to express myself in writing. And it started out just a medium to do that through. And to be seen by other people, I think that's the end result of all writing. I mean, that's what you want to have happen. So I don't know if I'll get into newspaper necessarily, but I'm definitely going to write as my.
What would you suggest to all these kids now that they're kind of really entrenched as the newspaper editor of their school papers?
As to a future career, don't go into newspapers unless you're willing to make an absolute total commitment. Unless you have a genuine, deep-seated curiosity about institutions, people, why people do what they do. In short, unless you're an absolute news junkie, you should stay away from it. But if you meet all those requirements, and if you're good, you'll succeed in the business. There are jobs, always jobs, for the very good ones.
And as a news junkie yourself, what do you say, and how do you respond to Mr. Greenwood's comments?
I think there's so many places you can go with the field of communication. You can go into print journalism or broadcast journalism or photojournalism. And as a news junkie, there's so many ways to explore that through foreign correspondence. Somebody I admire, I would say, would be a foreign correspondent who's actually out there and can get the news themselves and talk to the people. Because I think that that's where you learn the most. And your responsibility as an editor is to communicate that with not only your staff, but with all your readers.
The high school newspaper is an effective training ground for cub reporters, staff writers, copywriters, and editorial writers and editors. This training ground is essential for the journalists of the future, a place whereby they can learn that writing is an act of faith, not a trick of grammar. For Teen Talk, this is Joseph Feinstein saying we will see you very soon.